Today's idea of the day is that planes should have self-defense mechanisms. Now, you may be wondering, what do you mean by a self-defense mechanism? Well, let's look for a moment at cars. There are a lot of cars today, like even Toyotas and Hondas, and a lot of high-end cars that have self-defense mechanisms. That means that if you're driving along and something runs into the road, it applies the brakes. There are, on a lot of cars, they have lane control, where there's little cameras on the side of your car that if you start veering outside of the lane, it actually can steer you back. So you can do this with cars. Google, of course, as you know, makes cars that don't even have a steering wheel. They drive themselves from point A to point B without a driver. And in fact, you could call them with your smartphone. They'll come out of the garage from your house, drive to where you are, pick you up, take you where you want to go. So that's cars with self-defense. Sounds reasonable. Saves lives, actually. In fact, Volvo says that in a few years, they're going to actually eliminate car crash deaths by making autonomous cars that are actually capable of just defending themselves from avoidable accidents. Of course, you can't get rid of unavoidable accidents, but there are going to be accidents that are avoidable. So if they could do this with cars, why not planes? Now, why would you want to do this in a plane? Well, let's first talk about how they could do it. Planes can already take off and land with a automatic pilot. They can also do the navigating with an automatic pilot. So suffice it to say, unlike the movies in the 70s where there was the pilot is ill and there's no pilot to land the plane, and they have to teach a passenger how to land the plane, planes can already take off and land on their own. In fact, the military has drones doing a lot of the dirty work. They take off from an aircraft carrier, fly to their target, drop bombs, and then fly back and land on an aircraft carrier safely. Now, they can already do this. So why would they need to do this? In a word, terrorists. They need this because of terrorist attacks. Now, let's talk about 9/11. We all know what happened there. And as I watched this unfold with sheer horror, like everyone else, the first thing that actually struck me was I didn't think a plane was capable of flying into a building. I mean, I thought at the time that planes already had some sort of self-defense mechanism, some sort of an automatic override when the system detected an unsafe pattern, something that basically was unsafe. But of course, this was obviously 15 years ago. But what did they do when pilots, or in this case, these were passengers, broke into the cockpit, grabbed the wheel, and did what they did? They spent tons of money on beefing up airport security, and they spent an awful lot of time working on trying to make the door to the cockpit impervious, so that there's no way a terrorist would get inside the cockpit to take control of the plane. All right? That was a really, really bad idea, to be honest with you, because as we all know, years later, in fact, about a year ago this week or somewhere thereabouts, a co-pilot who was already on the other side of the security door took control of a plane and crashed it. And that's something I've always thought was a possibility. I mean, the fact is, you can't protect people and buildings and a country by working on trying to strengthen the door inside of a plane. Planes are a horrific and powerful weapon. They can do lots and lots of harm, not just crashing into, the ocean as one plane was forced to, or into mountains. But as we know, with 9/11, they crashed into buildings, and they were shooting for very high-profile, high-populated buildings. They were shooting for the White House as well. We need planes that are capable of having no override. If a plane, through GPS and other technology, has essentially a trajectory that is harmful to the plane and the passengers and potentially the target, the plane itself, just as an autonomous car, should essentially seize control. And granted, it's not going to know what to do initially, but it should at least fly away from the obstacle and do a little timeout. Let's say it flies around for 20 minutes, then gives the pilot, if there is some sort of need for some override, to work with air traffic controllers to unlock and change its trajectory. But given in and of itself, what the systems should be capable of doing is, as soon as it detects that it's being flown in a pattern that's way off of the original flight plan and potentially heading towards something, a target, whatever that target may be, a place where no plane should be going ever, no matter what. I don't care if the pilot says, well, look, we need humans flying these things. If there's a trajectory that a pilot, good, bad, or indifferent, is essentially screwed with, that plane should have autonomy in that case to at least fly up and, if possible, essentially get the authorities notified so that that plane could now head for an airport and automatically land itself. At that point, the pilot should have no more authority, whomever that may be, whether he be a passenger who took over or a pilot who's already had bad intentions. So that plane should be able to fly away from the obstacle into a holding pattern, at least initially, and then slowly fly back to an airport where the authorities can essentially take over from there. And basically, something like this is not science fiction. It's extremely easy to implement, and I have no idea why such systems aren't in place. I have no idea why they weren't in place back then, and it to me seems a fundamental feature of any machine that is capable of being a weapon, that it must be rendered incapable of being used as a weapon. This is something that we must do. It's something we have to do. We need to spread the word to get this sort of system in place, make it mandatory on any large craft, and that is today's idea of the day. So hey, I hope you liked today's idea of the day, and while you're still there, click the little subscribe links in the corners. That would be the greatest thing in the world, because if you do, you'll see a brand new idea each day, and I promise you, some of them don't suck.